Hey, how you doing? Another week, another video from Paul Seaver and Palm Beach Springs Water Company on electrolyzing water. So, we talked about a couple other things to bring things up to speed. What is electrochemistry? What is electrochemistry for water? What's the difference in a couple of different types of units and technologies out there for making consumables to making chlorines and stuff like that. In the last video, we talked about ionic product, which is very important because that's what separates it from everything else, is the increase in ionic product to, in this case, a maximum 6.45, which is cluster free. Well, what does that all mean and why does it matter? So today, I'm going to try as hard as I can to tackle the subject of absorption, which is super freaking complicated. So some of the stuff is just, even for me, I'm still learning. Some stuff I know the answers to, but I may not understand the foundations of those things, such as octagonal constants, because they're all mathematics. I'm no mathematician. But what I do know is I do know the answers to a lot of things, even if I don't understand the answers yet. So I can bring clarity to the subject in that way. The chemists out there, they're going to understand this stuff better than I do, and I'm going to put out a disclaimer right now. First off, this video is going to be long. There's no doubt about that, because this is not an easy subject to communicate. So for you chemists out there that are going to call me out and say, BS, Paul, you're speaking gibberish, you have no idea what you're talking about. First off, yes, I agree with you. I have very little knowledge of what I'm talking about, but it's not gibberish. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about here is the difference between what these things mean in chemical chemistry, chemical reactions, and electrical reactions. Now, for my own self, the first time I brought this subject up years ago is when I hit the firing squad with chemists. And back then I didn't know as much as I know today. I didn't understand it as well as I understand today, so I couldn't really do battle. Okay? But what I did do is I put together my thought and I sent it, well, I had it sent through my liaison to the person who is undisputedly the top expert on the entire subject. And he said I was right. So I'm going to repeat what I said in the past. And today, 8 years later, I have a lot more confidence in what I'm saying. Okay, because this is a very complicated subject. So what I'd like to do is I would like to cover it through the eyes of agriculture, because this is where I learned it the best. This is where the light bulb went off and I understood it. And so agriculture, with obvious differences, is the same as humans, animals, everything. So hydration past the membrane of a cell is no different in any one of these circumstances. The only difference is, what are you trying to hydrate with and what are you trying to drag in there with it? So I'm going to say this through the eyes of agriculture. So starting back in 2015, I started working with a guy named Dr. Sam Glucksman, who's a doctor of plant medicine in South Florida. So he found what I had very interesting, so he invited me out to his development lab to start working with him. And so we did. And so the first subject that we covered, we covered was pH compatibility for concentrates and how to get them to perform better by giving them what they're actually engineered for. So on a commercial farm, commercial produce, sugarcane, rice, what else they do, cabbage, these big farms out there, tens of thousands of acres, they ain't gonna let you play in their field. So what we started out with was broad spectrum herbicide, total kill, weed killer. I get nailed on the way I say this all the time because I like to say glyphosate, and that obviously that's not the way you pronounce it. I know, I just have a messed up mouth. That's the way it comes out. Glyphosate. All right, so if I say glyphosate, don't freaking shoot me for it. You know what I'm talking about. So that's the way it comes out when I'm in a rhythm. So anyway, it goes back to being dyslexic. For a long time, I thought that's what the word actually was, until Sam corrected me and said, dude, you ain't even come close to saying it right. So anyway, how do you get glyphosate when you're applying it in a foliar application? How do you get it to absorb through the membrane of a leaf, become flow mobile, and translocate through the entire structure, even down to the tips of the hairs of the roots? That's the problem with glyphosate. So if you follow its engineering, you can do that. But the problem is, like most concentrates, in the field, you don't have those perfect conditions. What is that perfect condition? That perfect condition has to do with a water that has a pH of less than 3.0. Okay, where are you going to get that in the field? It's impossible. Okay, so in order to use it properly, in order to use it effectively, you have to compensate for how bad the water is. I have an illustration here I'm going to show. I'm going to back off the camera now. I'm going to just sit down on a bucket here. I'm where I just do my work and stuff. Flip this over just a little bit because it's quieter. So I have these two jars that illustrate what we're going to talk about, but I don't want to do it yet because it won't make any sense. Okay, so here's where I know the answers to some things that I don't necessarily understand the full spectrum of it. So in my research, I had to teach myself, and with Sam's help, what does it take to actually deliver something past the membrane of a plant so that you can use it effectively, of the cell of a plant, of a leaf. And so I found the answer to that. And so the answer to that is you have to change the octagonal constant of whatever it is that you're trying to bypass the membrane with to -1 to 1. Now, that's all mathematics, so for me too, but that's the answer. I didn't create the answer, I researched and found the answer. So the answer to that became very important because that's absorption. That right there, that's the answer. When somebody says, what's absorption? Absorption is when you have something that has a negative constant of -1 to 1, you can now absorb it. Period. That's the rule. What's the rule come from? The rule comes from what does it take to travel through an aquaporin. The only way to enter inside a cell without damaging the membrane is to travel through the aquaporin. To travel through the aquaporin, you have to have a single ion or single component with a single molecule of water that has an octagonal constant of -1 to 1. So that's important to my entire business because everything that we do has to do with that one thing when it boils down to it, when it comes to absorption. Okay, so here's the thing. I made a couple of charts this morning, but unfortunately I was out of colored ink, so they're all in black and white, but they're better than nothing. So in electrochemistry, how do you change the octagonal constant of an aqueous medium? Well, you do it with electrical charge. So when you increase the IP, you're changing the octagonal constant. So I have a graph here that was made by Dr. Wohlert, who would be the second most authority to go to, only by his own saying that he doesn't consider himself more of authority than Dr. Hanoka. So Dr. Wohlert, who I know watches these anyway, this is his, and so this tells you the conversion of ionic product in comparison to using heat. So where you use your tap water down here at ambient temperature, when you start to raise it using so much amperage and voltage compared to so much heat. And when they're right here, you know, at your maximum boiling point before it turns to steam, you're at 6.45, so both of them. So at that point, you're at a single ion, single molecule. So I made a little chart, sort of chart. You probably can't read it. So this would be your, I did the best I could with them. I'm only so good on the computer. So this would be your typical clustered ambient water. You have an average of 15 unbalanced ions, both positive and negative, acidic and alkaline, and you have one that's constantly either you're gaining or losing one molecule on a constant basis. Okay, so that's the one molecule that's available for uptake. When you go to nano, the difference is you're breaking that up into 3 clusters, and now you increase your absorbency because you have 3 molecules available for uptake. When you go to dual polarity, ionic, 6.45 ionic product, all ions are available for uptake. They're all separated and they're all balanced. You can't see it. I put a plus and a minus in there, but I couldn't get it big enough to see because I'm not good enough. Bottom line. Okay, so anyway, if that helps explain how we increase absorbency, and until you reach this, you can't absorb at all. You can only absorb a single molecule. So this is why you can increase your absorbency to 100%. Now, the reason it says plus and minus, I'll get into really quickly, and then we'll get into the rest of it, just so you understand the differences. So we're using, basically, just starting out for a basic understanding, okay, because we go way beyond anything I'm talking about. All right, so I'm just trying to introduce it. So as an introduction, we're only going to think about 2 different types of units. We're going to think about one unit that takes one water in and it splits it perfectly by charging both sides. Okay, so on one side you have 2.4 pH acidic water coming out, and on the other side you have 11.8 pH alkaline water coming out. Now generally the ORP of this is going to be negative 800 and negative 850. The ORP of this is going to be as much as 1170. They're pure solutions. That's what I'm going to show you in a moment with these also, with these bottles that I have. Is one bottle has this, the other bottle has this, and what a difference that makes in something like glyphosate and why it's engineered for less than 3.0 pH to be stabilized. So I'll show that in a moment. And then in consumption, and in like hydrothermal and stuff like that, you're using a unit that's more like this, where you have one water coming in and it's affected by both the anode and the cathode, but when it comes out as one water. So you're still at neutral. And that has a range of 5.5 to 10.5 by how we offset the polarity. This one, we don't offset the polarity, we just maximize it on both sides. Okay, so that's how you make the 3 different mediums: the basic, the neutral, and the acidic. Now the one that had the plus minus, that's this. So that's a little deep to get into. We're not going to get into it. So just assume that the plus minus is a real thing, because it is. It's patented and everything. All right, so it's a dual polarity ion because it's both ions collected together, separated into single ions, all acidic and all basic, and then when they come back together, they match up 1 for 1. And then there's a dominant charge put on it depending on what you want. Now, if you're using it for consumption, you're going to have a negative dominant charge on it so that it's in the alkaline range. If you're making hypochlorous acid, you're going to put a positive dominant charge on it to bring the pH down. Okay, so we can make hypochlorous acid with this just as easily as with a single polarity. The difference is, if we make the hypochlorous acid with this, it'll be a lot more stable. But we won't get into that because that's not what we're talking about. Okay, so absorption. So I hope that separates the confusion of what the difference between sink water, electrolyzed water, single polarity, dual polarity. Okay? In single polarity, you can't unbalance anything because you only have one power. You can make one dominant, you can make alkaline ionized water, and you can make hypochlorous acid, but that's it, you're done. You know, you can make, you know, some people, those people call it a catholyte and an analyte, but that's it, that's all you can make. And in this, sky's the limit. You can make whatever you want to because you've got total control over the whole thing. This could either be plus, this could be minus, or this could be plus and minus, which is what we're going to get into now. So, it's a tough subject. Ooh, I hope I'm not knocking the table now because it's not screwed down so I can move it easier. So now let's reverse back. Damn, I'm already on 16 minutes. It's going to be a long one, but it's going to be worth it. So now let's reverse back to that rule, the octagonal constant of -1 to 1. So you have to have a single ion with either a negative charge or a positive charge. There's no way in self-ionization, Mother Nature's way, or in chemical methods of manipulating that to be a complete -1 and 1 single ion, but that's exactly what we have right here. So this is super unique. So that's what makes aspirate super unique, and this in itself is that in that frame, most people have to either pick a -1 or a 1. So 1 would be the positive. One is acidic. You have to be at -1 alkaline or +1 acidic. One single ion in one molecule to go through. Okay, that's all it can fit. Now, that particle sizing itself is 0.0001 micron. Okay, so this is also important because if everything we ever say is true about dual polarity electrochemistry that is 100% absorptive and it can deliver a payload, everything about the octagonal constant -1 to 1 has to be true. So that's why I know the answer, but I don't necessarily understand the mathematics of it. I kind of do in my own way, but not like a PhD does, that's for sure. So now we have the aquaporins, which I'm not really qualified to get too deep into that either. I only know just a little bit, only that has to do with electrochemistry. The aquaporins are selective. You got an aquaporin that accepts -1, you got an aquaporin that accepts 1. So it's looking for those components. And so of course the difference is whether or not they're acidic or a basic charge, you know, because we're talking about positive and negative. So we're not really talking about acidics and basics. We're talking about electrical influence. So all your nutrients, all your pharmaceuticals, everything is electrically driven. You know, that's why they're always checking the ECs of this, the ECs of that. They have to be offset from the plant itself or they won't find each other. The plant can't move, the nutrients have to. You know, so that's how that all works. So a lot of people don't understand that. It's all by electrical influence. That's why electrochemistry, if you can control both the negative and the positive at the same time in the same material, simultaneously, you control the material, period. And so that's what we do. So once you get into the rhythm of that, you understand, you know, that's why this is advanced electrochemistry and not general. Okay, so anyway, I got off a track there again. So you got your two aquaporin types. You got ones that accept negatively charged material and ones that accept positively charged material. So in that, okay, it's too soon for the jugs. All right. Then you have what is unique about dual polarity open loops. And that is that you have a dual polarity ion that's both negative and positive. So this ion is actually recognized by both aquaporins, which makes it 100% absorbable. So the claim that neutral is 100% absorbable has to meet that requirement or it's not true. Okay? So now, since it's all mathematics and it's all patented and it's all laid out and it's all specialized chambers, and there's no argument about the patented dual ion, then the patented dual ion must be 100% absorbable, just as we claim. So it has to follow those rules. I didn't make them up. We didn't make them up. We're following them. Okay? So now we have a pure acidic ion that's available for that uptake. We have a pure basic ion that's available for that uptake. And we have a negative 1-to-1 dual ion that's available for all uptake. Okay? Now, you could change that once you put the payload in there. You know, so keep that in mind. We're talking about the dual polarity ion with no payload. All right, you might have a bubble. You're going to have a bubble of gas in there, but that's not going to be affected by anything. So that's what you're trying to get past in there anyway, depending on what you're doing. So so now, okay. Oh, all right. So we got past all that. That's how you get past the membrane without damaging the membrane. So if you don't have that ability, which generally most don't, all don't, then you have to use oxidation or corrosion. And then that's why the concentrates don't work like they're engineered. Once you use oxidation and or corrosion to burn your way or dissolve your way into the membrane, you're messing up the whole system. You never really become flow mobile. You never really can translocate because you're shutting the system down. You're not traveling through the system compatibly. You're shutting the whole system down, and at some point, that's why it doesn't work as long, and that's why the recovery period is like 2.5 months. And if you use the correct mix, you could get 6 months or better. And we know that. We've done it. Of course, some of it has to do depending on the season, and it might cut down a little bit, but 4 to 6 months guaranteed. And not only that, but you can use the label required concentration. You don't have to put in more to offset the basic materials. So what does that mean? Well, that's simple. Now I'll do the jugs. Now the jugs are going to make sense. Okay? So, get some coffee in there. I'm not talking fast enough. So here I have, try not to disturb them. I have 2 jugs. So like I said, the one with the black cap was filled with the 11.8. I'm pretty sure I did 11.8 in there because I wanted it to be extreme. I wanted to show the extreme, you know. So I have a lot of content in there. So the reason, okay, so what I have in here is cinnamon and clove oil. So the reason I'm using cinnamon and clove oil, long story short, is it's the closest thing that I could get to glyphosate, there you go again, that you can see. Because glyphosate's clear, you can't see nothing in there. So then you just have to take my word for it that it's there. I don't want that. I want you to see it. So cinnamon and clove oil is a very strong, weak acid, just as glyphosate is. Glyphosate has a pKa at 10.6. That's its strength and acidity. And cinnamon and clove oil have a pKa of, I think it's either 10.4 or 10.2. I don't remember which it is. It has to do with the eugenol that's in there. Okay, so it's some special stuff. We don't want to talk about it right now. So anyway, we started to use this as a herbicide, but it went in a different direction. The thing is this. This jug of cinnamon and clove oil right here, in order to stabilize in a water, the water must be pure acidic. It cannot have one single basic component or you will see it. Now, the chemists understand that. And I'll show you what it's going to look like in a moment if that's to happen. But we have to talk about one jug at a time. So this one right here, I don't want to mix it up. This oil has been in here, and Sam and them can back me up on this. A lot of people can, because a lot of people have seen this silly jug. This has been like this for about 7 years. 7 years. The oil is as stable as the day I put it in there. It's just a little bit more orange because I leave it sit in the sunlight, and as you know, cinnamon clove oil, if you leave it sit in the sunlight, it gets darker orange through oxidation from the sun. But there's nothing wrong with it, it just turns the color. But you see, there's no chunks, there's no nothing. It's just clean oil. I put a boatload in there, more than if you were to take a sample from this, the cells or the molecules are full of cinnamon and clove oil. It can't hold as much as I put in there. That's on purpose so that you can see it. Okay, otherwise it would just be clear like this. Now, people say you can't mix oil with water, right? They say, oh, Paul, look, all your oil's sitting on the bottom, so you can't mix oil with water. This is 6.45 ionic product, pure acidic at 2.4, 2.5 pH when I put it in here, right? Watch this. Now remember, I got way too much in there. Can't mix oil with water? How you like that? It'll eventually start dropping out. So when you use it like this, we call it stay away. You got to mix it while you're using it. But hey, listen, when you do glyphosate and all that other stuff, they got to have agitators in the tank. They got to keep it mixed up too, you know. So, but look at that. Huh? Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So, this is the perfect water to mix this kind of stuff. Glyphosate, organic oils that are acidic, stuff like that. This is a product I call Stay Away. Through that entire thing, we ended up with a product. It's an awesome product. I can't talk too much about it because that's not what the video is about. Okay? But there it is. Cinnamon clove oil mixed up in nothing more than water, but electrolyzed water. So what's the opposite? The opposite is incompatible. Now, anybody in agriculture and probably quite a few other people understand this. When your products aren't compatible with the water that you're mixing them with, you get slimy stuff, you get crusty stuff, it clogs up your emitters, it makes it a pain in the butt, it's all chunked up in your tanks, you got to clean it all out, it's a mess. In your hydroponic systems, you got the same problem. You got it. You're trying to drop the pH of the well water with sulfuric acid. It's reacting with the calcium and the basics in the well water, and it causes the same thing, clogs everything up. Then you got to go flush it all out. You don't have to do that. All you got to do is make your water compatible. You just call me. Your problem is solved. Guarantee you solved if you call me. So, and this is why. Right here. This is why. This is what you need. You need something that's compatible with the stuff you're putting in it. This is what you're doing. Look at that crap. This is the same thing. The same oil. The water that I'm using here was made at the same time. This is the split. Splitting acidic from splitting basic. Okay? And the difference it makes using the right side of the water. So, look at that. Doesn't that look familiar? Doesn't that look like what you see in your systems from your products reacting with your water? You don't have to have that. You don't have to have all this trouble. And not only that, but just think about how much product you wasted creating this junk that wastes your time, money, and patience, your sanity. How many of you go insane and just want to pull out your 44 and just shoot the freaking water pump because it's all crusted up and you're sick and freaking tired of it, right? You don't have to have that. I fix that problem for you in a heartbeat. Look at this. So the oil's dropping back out. See? Nice and perfect. Look at that. Still holds quite a bit though. It takes about 2 weeks No, I'm sorry. Take about 2 or 3 days, I think. Nah, maybe it is 2 weeks. I think it takes 2 weeks for this thing to completely clear out. It holds that much for that long. But we're not going to talk about that. So that's what you have to do to make things compatible in order to absorb them. And no matter if it's water, if it's nutrients for your body, pharmaceuticals for your ailments, if it's pesticides for farming or whatever, people use pesticides for other things, all of this is maximized in its own performance once you supply the correct water and when you electrolyze it and you free up all the molecules for delivery, okay? Let me close with the rest of it on the delivery. So, now, once you have it like this, and you're distributing it, mouth is tied up, now it has the ability to absorb through the membrane of the cell and make it inside the intercellular fluids or space or whatever you call them. Once it does that, this is the same for the human body, but the terminology is different. Okay, so once it does that, it becomes phloem mobile. To a plant, that means it's getting in its bloodstream. Okay, so once you can absorb it through your aquaporins, where you're absorbing hydration, it does the same thing. It becomes phloem mobile for us in our bloodstream. And then once it's in our bloodstream, it has the ability, and in this case, I mean, it's probably, that's why I stay off of medical science, because I don't know how hydration completely works. And obviously, you're getting stuff to your bloodstream, blah, blah, blah. But in a plant, because we're not talking about just hydration here, we're talking about delivery of pesticides and nutrients. So once it becomes phloem mobile, then it translocates or travels throughout the entire plant or your entire body, down to the hairs of the tips of the roots, down to your fingertips and your toes and your own hair. I mean, what people always tell me, my barbers and stuff always say, "Damn, Paul, for 62 years old, you got some damn nice hair." That's all that hydrogen water I drink. That hydrogen goes right to the head. So I do a hydrogen inhalation, I do hydrogen consumption, and my crazy ass has one of the electrolyte units for hydrothermal on the water system of my house. So I'm bathing in neutral balanced water, I'm drinking neutral balanced water, I'm consuming, or that's what I just said. But anyway, you get the idea. So I'm big on that because I got chemical poisoning. I'm trying to flush my body, and so far I'm doing pretty good, I think. So once you can, so the whole idea is that you don't want to damage the cell. No matter if you're in hydration, you generally don't anyway, but when you're delivering pharmaceuticals and nutrients and stuff like that, you gotta break it down. You gotta be able to dissolve it into a molecule of water, because the molecule of water is the delivery system. That's the vehicle, man. That's the truck. And then you got an ion, preferably inside that molecule, that has the power to hold that component that you're trying to carry through the aquaporin with it, so that it can carry it with it. And of course, that ion is the one that's signaling the aquaporin, "Hey, here I am, I'm ready to go, open the doors, I'm coming in." So once you can change your water, and you can get out the junk that you're not supposed to have in there in the first place, but do it the correct way. Make sure you have enough content in the water for your proper delivery, no matter if it's human, plant, or animal. If you got zero water, how are you supposed to be recognized by the aquaporins? They don't recognize you. They're looking for that content. They're looking to bring content into the cell for no matter what it is, human, plant, or animal, for nutrition or maintenance. They're not looking for zero water. So that's not what they're looking for. That shit just passes right on by. You don't got no content in it. So you got to make sure you have the right water, have the right content, have the right charge, and have the charge at the correct level. You can measure the charge by pH. So it's a little bit different than measuring ambient, typical raw water. because now you've changed the electrical charge of the raw water, so now you're setting the charge, and ionization isn't, self-ionization. So anyway, that's pretty much it on absorption. So the rule of thumb from the universe is you have to have an octagonal constant of -1 to 1. You can't have that unless you can get enough energy to separate yourself from everything else and be a single molecule in that range. You can't get into an aquaporin. Then you have to fool it and you have to damage it. That's where decay and cancer and all sorts of disease comes from. That's what free radicals, they're just bouncing around, just destroying cells. So you can't use things with free radicals to deliver your stuff, you know. We don't want to get into all that, but anyway, that's it for today. It's 35 minutes. I don't know if anybody stuck it out through the whole thing. Gosh darn, thank you very much. I hope I was able to communicate this halfway decently anyway for the average Joe like me to understand. Till next time, adios.